So a couple weeks ago, I gave an exhortation at our church that was basically like, so some of you are suffering, and it could be, cancer, it could be the loss of a loved one, it could be anything. And I just said, you just need to know you're not special. Like, this is a really important thing for you to get, is like, you're not special. Like, yes, the suffering is real. I'm not denying that. Like, absolutely, weep with those who weep. Yes. But it's when you start to think like, oh, nobody knows the trouble I've seen. Nobody knows how hard I've had it. That impulse will grow and consume you and will destroy all your relationships. And so instead you need to go like, yes, this is hard. Objectively, it's hard. And I do feel the weight of it, but I have hope. Like, that's what Jesus is real. I have hope. And so I don't sink into my sufferings and my hardships and adopt. I can be wronged, but not become a victim, if that makes sense. Like, you can be victimized, but not be a victim.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Feminine Glory podcast. I am one of your hosts, Lydia Edmonds, and I'm joined by my delightful co-host, Esther Edmonds.
Hello, everyone.
And we have a very special guest on the podcast today, so let's jump right into it.
Yes, on the podcast today, we have Dr. Rigney. He serves as Fellow of Theology at New St. Andrews College. Dr. Rigney not only is the author of 7 books, but he also loves to teach classes on biblical theology, C.S. Lewis, Shakespeare, English literature, and political philosophy. Beyond teaching, writing, and preaching, Dr. Rigney loves to coach high school football, play baseball with his 3 sons, and spend time with his lovely wife, Jenny. So, Dr. Rigney, welcome, and thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me. Good to be here.
All right, so we're going to open up with Lewis and Narnia. So we as a family were first introduced to Narnia and fell in love with it when our dad read the series to us when we were much smaller. And so in Live Like a Narnian, you also mentioned that you were first introduced to the series because of your parents. Yeah. So how important do you think it is then that parents read or give the Chronicles of Narnia to their children?
Oh, I think it's like a no-brainer. For Christian parents to just, like, this is one of the things you have to do. I think the harder question is, when do you do it? Like, how soon? Which often gets more complicated depending on ages of kids, right? Because you got somebody who's, 6 or 7, and then you've got like a 2-year-old. Does the 2-year-old have to sit through it? It gets tricky. Those are actually trickier conversations than you might think. But in general, I think oftentimes the little ones, especially if you involve some kind of treat, can stick it out and eventually will catch up. But I think reading them out loud. We did read aloud. I actually don't remember my upbringing. Like, I don't remember. I assume my parents read them to me. I know that we had them, and I know that I eventually was like reading them. You know what I mean? But I don't actually remember like my mom or my dad reading them to us. I don't know that we actually did that. But when my kids were younger, we did. I read through them all with them. And then after that, it was kind of just, we did audiobooks on road trips or just driving around town. So they did that a bunch. And then I think that they've kind of gone back and read them. There's an interesting dynamic with it, though. I don't know. Different people are probably different on this. But like I know when I was younger, I read them a bunch. And then there was a stint where I didn't. And then I think I was in college when all of a sudden I picked them back up. But there was like a season where it was like, I'm not all that interested in these. These are because they felt like these are kids' books because I read them when I was a kid. And so I'm doing other things. I'm reading other books. But then all of a sudden I was in college and they were sitting on my shelf and I was like, I'm going to read these. And I was like, these are awesome. So like there's a different appreciation you have maybe whenever you cross over that threshold.
So what is your biggest takeaway from Lewis and then also from the Chronicles of Narnia themselves?
Biggest takeaway? Okay, from Lewis as a whole, I would probably say, I can't do biggest because I just too technical. One of the biggest, I'll couch it that way. So I wrote a book called Lewis on the Christian Life, and the main theme that I kind of trace in that book is the choice, the idea that basically, he says it in Mere Christianity, every day, with every small choice you make, you're turning the part of you that chooses into something different than it was before. And taking your whole life together, you're either turning yourself into a hellish creature or a heavenly creature. You're either becoming more aligned with God, in harmony with God, in harmony with your fellow man and with yourself, or at war with all three. And one is joy, one is misery, one is heaven, one is hell. And every day you're just making those little decisions are everything. And so I think in a lot of Lewis's Great Divorce, that's big in Great Divorce, it's big in Till We Have Faces, it shows up in Narnia, but those little choices as kind of like the accumulated big choice, I think is a pretty significant deal. And so sticking with that, with Narnia, it's like Edmund, that's his story, right? Like he's been making lots of, everybody says, you know, wouldn't it be great if like you went to your grandmother's house and like found her wardrobe and opened it up and you got into Narnia? And I'm like, not if you're Edmund. It's not great, actually. It's really awful.
That's true.
Yeah.
If you're like everybody assumes that they would be Lucy in that story, right? Everybody's like, oh, if we got in, it'd be like, hey, there's a fawn and let's go have tea and this is awesome. But what if you're actually a stinker, a bully, rotten on this side of the wardrobe, and you get into Narnia? Then Aslan's going to lead you to, you're going to meet the White Witch. Like that's the story, and that's not a happy story. And so I think Edmund does demonstrate that, you know, you sow these seeds in his relationship with his siblings, his, you know, just grumbling, complaining, lying, and then he gets into Narnia, and he's like, yeah, now he starts to bear that fruit. He meets the witch. He becomes a traitor. He almost gets himself and his siblings killed. Because that's the kind of person he was. There's those little choices that we're going to be building up.
Kind of like you will reap what you sow, like a compound interest.
Yes, absolutely.
So do you have an overall favorite Lewis book?
Lewis book in general, overall favorite. This is tough. This is like asking which one of my kids is my favorite, actually. So I just taught Great Divorce so in my class we read through Great Divorce, so I'll say that one because it's fresh, and I do really enjoy teaching it. I think there's lots of fun things in it that Lewis does. So we'll say Great Divorce, and then if we went non-Christian, not non-Christian, non-fiction books by Lewis, I'd probably say the little essays, Weight of Glory.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Would be really good.
Yeah, I love that
Very good one. So if you could only recommend one of the Chronicles of Narnia for people to read, given the culture that we live in, what would it be and why?
Okay, so I'm assuming that this question assumes that they've read all 7 already, because if they're just starting out, it's you got to start. Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe is the only one you can read. I think it's illegal in most states to start with any other. It should be illegal. But if you've read them all and you're like, hey, is there one that's particularly timely? I think Silver Chair is the most timely. I think that there's lots of really interesting things that would be relevant to the modern world from Silver Chair. I could probably justify any of them, honestly. Like I did a talk recently on education in Narnia, and like the Prince Caspian has all this stuff about education, right? Like because it's like thousands of years in the future, and it's all these old stories, and are you going to be educated this way or that way? So there's all kinds of stuff like that. But Silver Chair would work for the present moment. The witch in Underland being kind of the key scene where, you know, you're being lulled to sleep by your surroundings, by our technologies, by the devil. You're being put to sleep and made to believe that there is nothing greater. There's no sun, no Aslan, no God, and you have to break that spell. You have to actually go put your foot in the fire and defy that unbelieving mood that kind of settles in. So I think there's lots of things there, among others, in that story. Yeah.
Would you say Christians as a whole are doing a good job at fighting that spell, or have we adopted it more than we know?
No, I think that Christians need a swift kick in the pants on some of that. I think it's really easy to allow, again, our technologies and just our habits to be formed and shaped by the surrounding world. And you kind of need, we touch grass. You need to actually engage with the world that God made, and not just the world that the algorithm feeds to you.
Yeah.
And so I think that's a big need. And then I think the other thing in Silver Chair that's interesting is the temptations they face on the way to find the prince, where they're cold, it's wet, it's raining, all they can think about is like warm baths, and so because of that they end up in a giant's castle about to be lunch. when if they would have just actually like, this life is hard, get over it, stop whining, and don't, be derailed from your mission.
Right.
So there's kind of that, Jesus talks about the soil, the soils, right? The seeds sown among, and then the plants grow up and it chokes it out. And it's what's the other plants that choke out the good seed? It's like, it's the pleasures of this world. It's the cares and anxieties of this world. It's relief from toil and hardship. So those kind of temptations are really, it's possible to get taken off mission, and then therefore the need to kind of regularly remind yourself of like what life is about, right? Remember the signs, remember the signs, remember the signs, nothing else matters, is how God guides us through the world. So I think all of those things would be really relevant for us.
Yeah. So Narnians as a whole have this type of like jollification about them. They whistle when they walk, they feast, they dance, and laugh heartily. So why do you think that Lewis makes such an effort to show the overall joy of the Narnians?
Yeah, so one of the reasons that he wrote them was coming out of World War I. Basically, Europe was just wrecked. Not just like, a whole generation of people had been killed in World War I. They were, he was writing them kind of at the tail end of World War II, or maybe started them when World War II was still going on. So you had this kind of like real heaviness hanging over Europe. And that he associated with Saturn, like the medieval planet, the old planet of death. Like just death is hanging over. And he really wanted to recover kind of this joviality and joy. Like we need to be reminded of this, that death doesn't have the last word. And so I think that's what kind of prompted him. We need to be reminded of this joviality and joy and gladness. And so that's then woven through all of the stories. Like that's part of the melody line in them is that theme, because life's hard and it's heavy. And so different, the various challenges they face are there, but he also wants to paint this picture of like the beauty of humility and glad-heartedness and gratitude in the Narnians.
So who would you say does a better job, Chesterton or Lewis, on picking up on the joy?
Well, it's just they're different. So like I've never hugely gotten into Chesterton's fiction. And so so Chesterton's fun in his prose, even in way like Lewis is clear. Chesterton sometimes like it gets away from, like he turns it up to 11. We're just going to go all the way on the metaphors, and the sentences are just like there's like swords. He's swashbuckling, and so. For prose, Chesterton's can sometimes be more interesting, although I think sometimes more harder to read because you can get lost in it. I think Lewis actually valued clarity more. I don't know that anybody ever really reads Lewis and comes away feeling like more confused. I think there's places where he himself, maybe wrong, and so we're like, how do we, he says this in Mere Christianity. What do we think about that as evangelicals? So there's those kind of things. But he's just aiming for clarity all the time, whereas Chesterton, I think, aims to be more interesting or something like that.
Gotcha.
So I personally I'd rather read Lewis, but I get why, and I enjoy Chesterton, but like Chesterton takes more work in my mind.
Yeah. That's funny. We were just talking about that, and I was telling her it's more of the flowery language that you can kind of get lost in the weeds with Chesterton.
100%.
So one of the books that you wrote is called The Sin of Empathy, aka Hillary Clinton's favorite book right now. Yeah. And in that book, you specifically address untethered empathy. Would you mind giving a 30,000-foot view of what untethered empathy is and how it has affected our culture?
Yeah, boy, that's you write a book about that. The idea is that this Christian virtue of compassion in the modern world has degenerated and been corrupted into a tool of manipulation that goes under the name empathy. And so the book's called Sin of Empathy, but that's like saying the sin of anger. Could there be good anger? Sure. Could there be good empathy? Yes. But like the common thing that I see in our culture is the way that empathy becomes a tool of manipulation, where basically we cater and accommodate the person who either is or claims to be the biggest victim, and we kind of rearrange everything around their pain and their victimhood status. And obviously, you got the big examples of that with kind of wokeness over the last decade or so. Trans movement would be like the kind of ultimate end, maybe not the ultimate end goal, but it's certainly an end goal of all of that, where we have to sort of butcher the English language and tell lies because someone is confused about who they are. So that's kind of like the end, but there's smaller scale versions of this. Like families can be shot through with this, where that one family member who throws the biggest pity party always gets their way. And so the family walks on eggshells around them. They don't want to set them off. And that's an example of kind of what I mean by the sin of empathy, where, or they put the martyr complex, woe is me, everything's so hard. Why doesn't anybody ever, care for me? And actually, Lewis is really big on this. Like, this shows up in a lot of his books, actually. Great Divorce, especially, Four Loves, Till We Have Faces. All of these basically will have a character or multiple characters trying to wield the compassion of those who love them against them, right? So the sulks, basically. Like, if you think about the sulks, what the sulks is appealing to is the sin of empathy. Why would it be bad to do that? Well, because you wind up telling lies. You wind up doing things that are harmful and destructive, enabling behaviors that are dishonoring to God and hurtful to people. And you do so, why? And you're saying, well, I was being compassionate. I was being empathetic. And so that's basically the sin I'm targeting. And I use this kind of analogy of if you had somebody who's hurting, they're kind of drowning in quicksand. You can walk away, not care. That's apathy. That's bad. We don't want that. Everybody kind of knows that that's bad. But then you have two ways that you could try to help them. One would be you jump in. Like, you just jump into the quicksand with them. Like, you're hurting. I'm going to jump in with you. And that's what I mean by untethered empathy. You're not tethered to the shore. You're just in there. Now you're both sinking, and this is bad. But biblical compassion is going to, like, reach in there and grab them. So you do enter into their pain, but you also stay anchored, tethered to the shore. You grab a branch, you hold on so that you have something to brace against. You can pull them out, because that's the goal, is to get them out of the suffering, not to leave them in the suffering. So that's kind of I'm trying to argue against the sin of empathy and in favor of the tethered compassion.
Where do you think this idea of this victimization stemmed from originally?
Adam in the garden. It's an old temptation. Like, it shows up in the Bible. Like, God assumes a couple of times in Deuteronomy that, like, if you're there's one, I think, in Deuteronomy 9, where he says, if your son or your daughter or the wife whom you love or your best friend tries to lead you into idolatry, he says, your eye shall not pity them. Because he assumes that in that circumstance that you're going to be tempted to go along with it out of your natural affection for them, your love and care, and I don't want them to get in trouble, and so you'll indulge it. So, like, the Bible's aware of it. Again, Lewis is talking about it, and so it's an old thing. I think what happened in the last 20, 30, 40 years in the West is it became a really potent tool of manipulation that progressives figured out. This is a really good way to get Christians to go along with stuff. So if you can just present someone as the victim, Christian compassion, which is a virtue, kicks in, but then the definition changes. What does it mean to be compassionate? What does it mean to actually love someone or help someone? Well, helping them means you let them get this surgery that they think will make them feel like they're in the right body, or helping them, means affirming their delusions, or letting them get gay married, or all of these sort of things are basically accommodating people's sinful tendencies in the name of compassion. And I think progressives figured out that was a really good way. Christians did not want to be thought of as heartless. And so if you call Christians heartless, you don't care about people, you don't love people, Christians kind of back off. We'll back off. And so it was an effective way for the left to advance their agenda, which they did.
So in what ways would you say then that empathy is also tied to feminism?
Yeah, so I think women are the more naturally empathetic, compassionate sex. Like, this is what makes them such great moms. God built women for this. It's why when you talk about women's intuition, their ability to read subtle changes in emotion in social settings, or be attentive to their, they can tell the difference that, when their infants crying, is that a, I'm hurt cry, I'm hungry cry, I have a poopy diaper cry. Like, they can just, like, the subtleties, women are just highly in tune. God made them this way. And so that's a great gift, and it's a blessing for women to be compassionate in that way. The problem comes when that blessing is moved to sort of guardianship roles, places where, like, what's needed is not like lean in with compassion, but actually draw clear lines and enforce them. That's a place where that compassion can be a liability, actually. So you have, so this would be like female pastors, right? This is kind of like the classic example. Why is it that churches that ordained women, say in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, within 10 to 15 years were, promoting homosexuality, ordaining gays to the ministry, sanctioning same-sex marriage? Now they all find the rainbow flag. Like, what was that? Why was it consistent like that? And the answer is because once you had women in those roles, then all it took was somebody saying, "Hey, I'm hurt, I'm oppressed, I'm a victim," and then now we'll affirm that what was formerly a sin, like God says this is bad, but that female compassion overrides it. And so I think that's an example. I think the same thing happens in kind of political contexts, where I think the immigration thing right now actually is a really good example, where compassion for refugees or for those who want to come in from other countries kicks in, and I think women in particular can be susceptible. I've seen crazy clips of women, like there was a German woman who was like raped by an immigrant, and her main concern was that people were going to be like racist against immigrants or something like that. And like, it was just like, because it's like her compassion was overriding her own self-protection, which is crazy. But you're like, yeah, that's what sin does. And that I would say men can do the same. Like, it's not just a exclusively female phenomenon. Men clearly can have their compassion get away from them. Often, actually, it's male compassion for women. We don't like, female emotions. I don't want to do that, so I'll go along with something that I think is a bad idea because I don't want to deal with female emotions. Men can totally do that, and men have different tendencies and temptations as well. But I think those are the ways that kind of like that dovetails. And so it's no surprise to me that a feminist age would be particularly susceptible to the sin of empathy. Like those, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So one idea that is directly related to the topic of empathy is the idea of stepping on ganglia. So for those who may not know, could you explain what ganglia are and why in the world they need to be stepped on?
Yeah, so there's this so one of the places my sources is this guy named Edwin Friedman, who is this Jewish rabbi and counselor from like the 90s, early 2000s. And he wrote a little book of fables. And in one of them, he describes like a person whose ganglia, that's their nerve endings, were like growing on the outside. It's a myth. It's like a little fable. And basically the idea is that all growing up, because his nerve endings were on the outside, people coddled him and catered to him, right? Everybody just was really careful, like, don't hurt him, don't hurt him, don't hurt him. And because of that, the ganglia grew. They got longer and longer and longer and more sensitive. And then basically he gets married and his wife is doing this all the time. And then finally she's like starting to really suffer because this is really hard to just always be catering to this. And she snaps at some point and she basically stomps on his ganglia. So she stomps on his nerve endings. And then the next day he's healed, like they're gone. And basically the idea is that oftentimes we can enable that victimhood mentality. We can enable a woe is me, oh poor me, by our compassion. We want to be compassionate, but we can kind of coddle and cater, and that actually feeds something in people. So some people, it's really strange. I mean, maybe not strange, but some people like are very self-centered, and one of the best ways to be the center of attention is by being the greatest sufferer. It's not by being the greatest person or like having the most accomplishments. It's actually by having the greatest hardships. And so they're constantly going on and on about their hardships as a way of garnering attention. And if you feed that, you're going to get more of it. Whereas stomping on that, resisting that. So a couple weeks ago, I gave an exhortation at our church that was basically like, so some of you are suffering, and it could be, cancer, it could be the loss of a loved one, it could be anything. And I just said, you just need to know you're not special. Like, this is a really important thing for you to get, is like, you're not special. Like, yes, the suffering is real. I'm not denying that. Like, absolutely, weep with those who weep. Yes. But it's when you start to think like, oh, nobody knows the trouble I've seen. Nobody knows how hard I've had it. That impulse will grow and consume you and will destroy all your relationships. And so instead you need to go like, yes, this is hard. Objectively, it's hard. And I do feel the weight of it. But I have hope. Like, that's what, like, Jesus is real. I have hope. And so I don't sink into my sufferings and my hardships and adopt. I can be wronged, but not become a victim, if that makes sense. Like, you can be victimized, but not be a victim. And I think that that's something that the modern world's gotten exactly backwards, to the point where that's where all of the safe spaces and microaggressions, like these little subtle things that people blew out of proportion. And it's like, that was a good, microaggressions is a great example of ganglia, just growing and growing. It's not even real insults. It's like, you overlooked something that maybe you didn't even know about, but it deeply hurt my feelings. And so now you need to apologize and do the work. All of that whole thing was just an incentive to like become the greatest victim, be the biggest victim, because the biggest victim is in charge. Like, that was the rules of the Victimhood Olympics, was if you're the greatest victim, you get to be in charge of everything. And so what did we get? A competition for who's the biggest victim. Thankfully, we've kind of recovered, like, at least parts of the country, I think, have gone like, yeah, that was a bad idea. Other parts, though, are just doubling down. Like, no, that's actually the way we want things to work, is the greatest victim wins. And it's a major conflict, I think, in our culture at the moment.
So how would you say, like, we as Christians could keep fighting that and then also withstanding? Because oftentimes when you do offer pushback, like, there can be repercussions for that, consequences of people then, fighting back on the opposite end. So how do we as Christians continue fighting that?
Yeah, so you want to be compassionate, but you want your definition of compassion to be biblical. It's like, how was Jesus compassionate? Well, he was compassionate by actually calling people to repentance, healing them and helping them, but it was always helping them get out of it, not helping them stay in it. Okay? So, so one of the things is, does my compassion require me to lie? Like, do I have to tell falsehoods right now? Do I have to indulge in emotions or share emotions that God thinks are bad? So if someone's sinning in their emotions, which they can, I think that's even a part of the debate, is like, can emotions be sinful? And it's like, of course they can. They're not always sinful, but like, of course they can. And some people are like, no, they can't. Like, if someone's hurting, like, whatever they feel is totally valid. And like, even that language, like, valid, well, you mean they have it? Like, they feel that way? Sure. But should they repent of it? Like, should they repent of those emotions? And so biblical compassion is going to like see it, like, yes, I see those emotions, but not going to join them. And one of the examples, the Bible gives us this just amazing story when you stop to think about it. We always focus on the sufferings of Job, but his wife in that story is actually really fascinating, because she's gone through everything that he's gone through and probably felt it in a different way, right? She just, like, the worst thing that could possibly happen to a mother happened to that lady. Her kids, born from her body, are killed in a night, right? Like, she may go like, they stole of all of our, sheep and our oxen. That's bad, but big deal. Like, but all my kids just died. And then she comes to Job and she's like, when he's worshiping and grieving, and she's like, you still holding fast your integrity? Curse God and die. Like, just be done, man. And like, what's driving that? She's like, she's sad. She's grieving. She's, a mother. And she's angry at God for allowing this to happen. And she's angry at her husband, and she doesn't even know why. And so she's just lashing out. And so she's like, curse God and die. Like, just like, tell God, give God the middle finger. And Job in that moment has to say, like, at that moment, it would be really tempting for him to go like, my wife is hurting. I need to join her in these emotions and to share her perspective. But instead he says, you're speaking foolishly. You're speaking like a foolish woman. Shall we receive good from the Lord and not evil? Like, God is in control of all this. Like, I came naked into the world, naked I'm going to go out of it. Blessed be the name of the Lord. Lord gives, Lord takes away. Like, that's his response to her anger and emotion. And that's tethered. He's anchored to something, not her. Like, he's not anchored to her emotions. So I think that that's the big call, is like actually be compassionate, don't become heartless. But the other thing is you have to be willing to be accused of being heartless. You have to not care that people are going to lie about you, misrepresent you, call you bad names. You just need to make sure that they aren't true. Like, does God think I'm being heartless? No. Okay. Well, then I like, then they can call me those names. That's okay. Like they called Jesus names. Name calling is one of the standard tactics of the devil. He's going to slander you. He's going to say falsehoods. That's okay. Like, rejoice, Jesus says. Rejoice in that day. Be glad. You're in good company. But make sure it's not true. Like, actually be compassionate.
That's really good.
So in a recent Doug and Friends, y'all mentioned that we are headed for an intellectual warfare. Could you explain for those who have not listened to that episode what that is and how we as Christians can best prepare for it?
Yeah, I think we were talking actually about like kind of like a propaganda war, where I think with AI, with the way that our algorithms and social media work, that it's really going to be difficult to know like what's real, what actually happened. And so learning to think clearly, to demand biblical standards of evidence, that you don't just believe something because someone tweeted it, that you actually can verify things. I think it's going to push us to be more, it ought to push us to be more trusting. Like, we have to be known and in community, like real life community, the kind where you can see people face to face, as a kind of protection against online rage culture. You know, like the algorithm is basically designed to appeal to your rage, your fear, or your desire, right? You know, you should want this, you should hate this person, or you should fear this terrible thing. And like that, it's just trying to stir your emotions up, and then it hooks us all up together, and there's empathy, sharing of it, and now we're off like in these like mobs. And so so the intellectual part of it is actually being sober-minded enough to step back, be grounded in a real community where you're known by people, worshiping the Lord, being involved with real life people. That's a protection so that you can think clearly when stuff happens out there, and actually know like what's true, what's false. Like what does the Bible say about this, as opposed to simply getting swept along by the emotions and the lies.
So I have a quick question along that line. So I've seen people, when we talk about like, especially social media being a big one where, you know, there's just so many lies being fed to the community at large on Instagram, on social media, on Facebook, whatever it might be. And I've seen a lot of Christians just retract from that, and they stop being on it, and they take a break, or indefinitely take a break. Yeah. Do you think that is a wise move? Because I've also heard that people say that needs to be, we need to take ground as Christians on those platforms. So what would be your take on that?
Yeah, that's a great question. I do think it's a think upon yourself with sober judgment kind of question. So I do think that should Christians be out there at some level? Yes. But I don't know that everybody should. And I think there are Christians who probably realize this is not good for my soul. And therefore, if I can't do this and be cheerful, then I should not do this. Which is true of a lot of things, actually. Like there's like if whatever you're engaged in constantly makes you fussy, fearful, angry, then it's not good for you. Like if your right hand causes you to sin, cut it off. That's not just about like pornography and sexual sin. It's like, is your hand causing you to sin? Like, is something that you're doing that's legitimate? Like this is like it's social media. Like, is there a law that says no social media? No. But if it's causing you to sin, then yeah, it might be good to cut it off. At the same time, I do think there are Christians who, I think about my own life, and it's really, there have been times in my life where I've thought my media intake is not good for me. It's not doing good things. I think especially when I was younger, fresh out of college, I would listen to things and I would get real like worked up about it. And the thing was I couldn't do anything about any of it. It's like, here's what's going on in the world. I have no power. Like nobody's asking me, what should we do about this problem, right? And so it was like all of this information with no place for it to go other than to stew in your soul. That's bad. And so now I would say like my social media stuff is like, I'm there to like, because I do think there's a battlefield element to it. Like this is push back on lies, say true things. There are people who aren't participating, who are observing, and you can kind of persuade them maybe. But it's battlefield stuff. But then it's like, shut it down, and I don't need to worry about it. Like, I don't need to check it all the time. I don't care what people are yelling at me about it. It's just, you can just kind of go slam that door, go play with the kids, go have dinner, go coach the football team. And so I think that, again, that kind of groundedness in real community and proportion is really, really important. Like, are you connected to people? And are you involved in, like, are you doing things? Are you building something? Are you building a community? Are you raising a family? Are you building a business? Are you preaching in a church? Like, whatever it is, like, are you actually doing what God has called you to do in your station? If you are, then that can be a supplement. And for some people, maybe even more of a calling, they're called to that role. But if not, then don't let it distract you from what actually matters.
Very good.
Well, Dr. Rigney, we want to be mindful of your time. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This is great.
Until next time, keep pursuing feminine glory. And as Dr. Rigney, you would say, keep it real.
All right. We'll see you on the next episode, everyone.
Bye. Well, everyone, this is the favorite part, everyone's favorite part of the podcast, where we ask you to like and subscribe our videos because YouTube likes us to. So we're doing it. And Apple Podcasts likes us too. Wherever you find our channel, they like us to ask you to like and subscribe. So we're doing it.
So if you are in favor, go ahead and smash that subscribe button. Or, you don't have to.
You can just walk away.
And we won't be offended.
Nope. If you don't like us, just walk away. Don't feel like you need to say anything. Don't feel like you need to explain yourself. Let's just do a clean breakup. You go walk away. And you don't ever have to listen to us again. So there you go.
So if you feel so obliged,
yep,
you can like it, you can subscribe, or you can go on your merry way.
Yep. Either way, the choice is up to you. Two roads diverged in a yellow wood.
Will you take the one less traveled by?
Will it make all the difference? Whether you listen to us or not. Anyway, there you go. There's our little bit that we had to say to subscribe.
All right.
So thank you guys.
Bye.
Bye.